What's going on, guys? Seth here, and I just watched the second episode of The Last of Us. Now, before I go through my full spoiler review, I want to let you guys know that Sarah was on for the last review of the first episode, and we discussed it in full detail, so go check that out. But she has not played through The Last of Us, and I've played through it like 8 times. So I wanted to continue having that conversation of 2 different people from different perspectives watching the show. She couldn't make this episode, but she'll likely be on the next one. I would also maybe like to do a separate episode after this, getting her opinions on it still, because I want to carry that forward. But yeah, this will just be my review because I just watched it. I want to talk about it. So let's jump into the recap. So this episode is essentially going from A to B. They make it to the Capitol in this episode. Before they do that, we get an intro, a flashback of essentially when the outbreak was starting. A lot of tension built up from this expert who examines a body and comes to the conclusion that if you can't track who bit this person, who infected this person, you're going to have to bomb this whole city. And realizing the weight of the situation, she just wants to go home with her family because she knows how bad this is going to get. There's no way to stop it, which I really appreciate. It's a really cool intro and lore expanding scene. So yeah, in this episode, though, we get a little bit of character development. We get some banter between Joel, Tess, and Ellie, which I appreciated, especially because in the last episode I felt like we didn't hear much from Ellie, so it's hard to kind of gauge anything from her. I think she's doing an okay job. She's definitely not Ellie from the game, but she's doing fine, so I don't really have an issue with her. It is still a little jarring because she doesn't look anything like Ellie and kind of doesn't act like her, but is going for something similar. But it was nice to see a little more of a fleshed out character. She's asking at one point if or where Joel's from, and he answers that. But then when she starts going for more information, he is unwilling to give that to her. So yeah, on their way to the Capitol, though, they go through a hotel, explore that a little bit. And then eventually they see infected in the road that they're planning on going down. They notice that the infected are all moving as the sun goes over them. And Tess explains that they're connected to each other and are able to communicate long distances through the fungus. Then they decide not to go that way. They take a detour through the museum where they run into our first look at the clickers, which I think looked great. And we got a really cool scene where they try to go silent through this place, which I appreciate that they emphasize silence, not being quiet, but do not talk. Because if you played the games, you know that clickers are very sensitive to sound. They try that. It doesn't work. They get into a fight where they got to use all of their resources to try and survive the situation. It's only 2 clickers, but that's a very dangerous situation in which they have to shoot the clickers, hit them with axes, and really just do whatever they can to try and survive. They do. And after that, Tess is super irritable, being kind of weird. We get the iconic scene from the game where they're on the rooftops looking at the Capitol at a distance and talking about the view. And then they eventually get onto the road where they make their way to the Capitol, finding out that the Fireflies they're supposed to be handing off Ellie to are all dead. As they investigate the situation, they come to the conclusion that one of the Fireflies was probably infected and they had to kill that infected member, but they were able to kill the other member, so it was essentially just chaos. And they're feeling kind of hopeless in this part because they don't know what to do. But Tess is adamant that they have to push on and get Ellie to the Fireflies because she reveals that she has been infected herself, and she shows where she was infected, and it's already spreading all over the place. It's going up her neck, down her chest, and then she emphasizes that if this is already happening that quickly to her, look at Ellie. They check out her arm, and it hasn't spread at all. You can just see where the marks are of where she got bit, and she makes it very clear that this is real. Ellie is immune, and that has to mean something, and she wants Joel to take Ellie to Bill and Frank's, which I'll be very interested on how they handle that. And yeah, through some discussion where Joel is hesitant and trying to process what's happening, they find out that a bunch of infected have been alerted to their presence through the fungus neural network through the ground, and they have less than a minute to figure this out. So in that time, Tess just fills the room with gasoline from a barrel that was full of it, and she's going to stay behind because she's infected. She's got to go out anyway, so she's going to try and stop them from following them. And Joel and Ellie make their way out of there while the infected come in, and one makes out with Tess, which is very weird, very awkward, very disturbing to watch. And she's able to drop a lighter into the gas, blowing up the floor of the Capitol. You can hear them screaming in there. That was really kind of crazy. And Joel and Ellie make their way to Bill and Frank's. That is the episode. And overall, I liked it. There was some differences from the game, but I think they work. There's a couple things that's really interesting about this. I'm very critical on a lot of video game movies and shows because they don't respect the original source material, but this show is respecting the original material in the sense that it is following the same story, not the same details, not the same scenes, but the same story, the same main factors of the story. And when it does deviate and change things, it's trying things out. It's doing things that are going to lead to the same outcome, but it's almost like experimenting, but also with the knowledge of what they learned from the original game and its story, evolving things. And I like it. It's fun. It's interesting because as somebody who's already watched or played the game so many times, I know what's going to happen. And in this, it's got me going, oh, they're doing that. That's interesting. But it's not deviating from where the story is going, which I appreciate. If the story completely changed, I'd be more critical of it. I'd be like, wow, they're doing that. It's crazy. But in this, it feels like it's just kind of like a fun, different version of the same story. And I really appreciate it. In the original The Last of Us, there's spores that are in the air, but they're only in certain areas. I guess they took that out of this show because they would just be in the air, period, and everybody would be infected, which is fine. So in this, they got the little tendril things that come out of their mouth, or bites and stuff like that spreads the fungus. And that's been interesting. It's the same effect outside of the spores. I kind of miss that they don't have the gas masks on in certain areas. But again, the point of them trying to play around with, well, that's kind of unrealistic. And they're, trying this, I think is cool. And then, the whole part with Tess, going out to infected instead of Fedra, I think is interesting as well. Still gives her kind of a badass out of the show. I thought it was cool that she kind of trying to hold off Fedra in the game, but in this she's trying to take out as many infected as she can. So it works both ways, but just different and gives me something new to see. And there's just a lot of little small things that keep changing while also keeping certain things the exact same as the game, which I really appreciate as well. As a huge fan of it. When they get up onto the rooftop or they got to cross over the wood, a little bridge, it's just a plank of wood. They say verbatim the same lines they say in the game when they're looking at the Capitol out in the distance, talking about the view. Really appreciate it. Even when they're talking with Tess at the end, before she goes out, there was some things they said that was exactly from the game. And those kind of callbacks are things that I can appreciate. But, a new viewer is still going to get the same thing from it because it just worked in the original game and there's no reason to change it now. I really liked the intro. I thought it was really neat. I mean, if you play the game, they talk about where the fungus started. But in this, we get a really cool high tension scene of bringing in an expert to examine a body because they don't know what's going on. They need an expert to come in, and she comes in, she checks it out, and she starts asking a couple questions after seeing what's up with it. And after they answer like, we don't know where she got bit from, she knows that this is a huge problem, absolutely dire. There's no way that they're going to be able to stop this now. So when they ask about a schmaxine, I don't know if I can say the actual word on YouTube, she's like, there's no medicine for this. We need to just blow the city up. And even then she's like, I need to be with my family because I don't think you're going to be able to stop this at this point. Really great scene. I loved that intro, and that's something that wasn't in the game. So that was really an awesome little touch to the story. It just kind of adds lore to it, which I really enjoyed. The dynamic between Joel and Ellie is interesting. Finally, we're getting some dialogue from Ellie in the second episode. She's she's not exactly like Ellie from the game. That's me putting it nicely, but I think she's doing a fine job so far. She is a smart ass. She's super into her environment, checking things out. There's a scene where they're walking in the water. She talks about how she can't swim, and that's definitely a factor in the game. But also she's like checking out the stuff in the hotel, which is something that she also does in the game. So it's a good little callback, but also adds to the whole she's curious. She's been living inside the walls of the city that she's been in for her whole life. So, she's naturally wanting to see, all the things she's only heard about. And I think there was a really good and fun element to that. But then, in contrast to Joel's character, who just is, we got to get this girl to where she needs to go so we can get the fuck out of here, head back, and, just make it another day and keep surviving. There's a really interesting element between those characters that I think the show is doing a pretty good job on. It's pretty similar to the video games. Then we have the encounter with the clickers in the museum, which I really liked because this is a part of the game where you are sneaking around and having to try and stealth your way through, take them out quietly. And in the show, they give you a little flavor of all of that. So like they start out trying to be quiet, and I really like the emphasis on like, we're not going to be quiet, we're going to be fucking silent, don't talk. That was a cool little touch. And then when they finally got to fighting the clickers, when you play The Last of Us, you got the normal infected, which are still kind of like humans with the infection in them. It's still growing, they can still see, and they go down about as easy as a person probably would. But when you run into clickers, it's always a little more serious because they can't see, but they can hear everything. And when they hear something, they come running, and they're super aggressive, and they take more bullets, and you got to get those headshots. The show, I think, emphasized that well, made them into a serious threat that they had to work really hard to defend themselves from just two of them, showing that these are things you don't want to fuck with. And I really appreciated that. The scene was drawn out in a good way. They were giving it everything they could to try and survive this scene, and I really liked it. I think they did a really good job, and the design of the clickers in live action, really cool. It looked like the game, and I really appreciated the design and the attention to detail. I watched the behind the scenes thing, and they talked about they had played with other versions of clickers for the show and came back to just doing the original design from the game, and I'm glad that they did that because it paid off. It looks like clickers, and I think new audiences can see this and go, whoa, those things are pretty crazy looking, and old fans like me can go, they did it. Thank you. I appreciate that. You didn't change things up in a weird way. I can see the tendril thing with the mouth and go like, oh, that's interesting. It's disturbing. I kind of like that. But the clickers, they kept them the way they should be. And I really appreciated that a lot. So very cool to see. And yeah, the big difference with Tess at the end was really interesting as well. I did like kind of the badass out of Tess with the Fedra guys, but blowing up the infected was cool as well. And I think the scene played out very similar. The dialogue was very similar, and we got the same point and direction that they need to go in, going to see Bill. It'll be interesting to see how they handle that, because in the preview they showed what would probably be a flashback, but also present day stuff that has to do with Bill and Frank. And I'm not going to talk about that for anybody who hasn't played the game, but I'll be very curious to see how they handle that. It looks like they're going to be fleshing some things out from the game that I definitely want to see how they handle. So, but yeah, overall, I really liked this episode. I think they're handling the show really good. I think my favorite thing about this so far in the 2 episodes I've seen is that they are sticking to the story, not the scenes, not the exact ways they happen, but the key beats to the story of The Last of Us. We're getting the same outcomes, sometimes through different routes. And I think that's fun as a person who's played the games a lot, because it feels fresh and new but familiar. feels respected, and I really enjoy that. I think they're really knocking it out of the park with this show so far, and I've been really enjoying it, and I can't wait to watch episode 3, especially because, like I've said already before, the differences that they're adding is fun for me, and the added lore is also a lot of fun. So there's something new and exciting for somebody who's familiar with the game. So yeah, I will be excited to see what Sarah thought of it, though, as somebody who hasn't played through the game and doesn't know what's coming. So that'll be fun. Stay tuned for that. But let me know in the comments what you guys think of episode 2 of The Last of Us. Did you like it? Did you not like it? If you didn't like it, why didn't you like it? If you liked it, what did you like about it? And what do you think about if you've played, no spoilers, please, for anybody who hasn't played through it, but if you've played the game, how do you think they're doing when it comes to handling the story and the way they're doing it? Did you like how they handled clickers? And what do you think about Joel and Ellie so far? Honest opinions. If you don't like them, that's cool. If you like them, that's cool. If you're somewhere in the middle, let me know. And yeah, I've been Seth, and until the next review, I guess they've postponed Nier Automata, so we will not be reviewing that anymore until that comes back out. But expect a Trigun review when that releases, and more reviews of anything that comes out that's worth watching for me. But I've been Seth, and talk to you guys later.